I just want to start out by giving a couple of general comments. We try and have one of our main meetings focus on our outreach, astronomy outreach at HAS because it's really a very important part of what we do.
Yep.
Uh, Astronomy outreach is one of the most wonderful things that we amateur astronomers can do because we're sharing what we love with people who are, have shown at least shown an interest to come out to an event, and it's amazing how awesome the reactions are we get, and you never know who is going to take away the wonder of the night sky and be inspired to learn science, technology, that sort of thing. And it's a big part of our mission at HAS. The other thing is for especially for new members, and I'm going to tell a little story on Amelia. But when I first joined HAS, I kind of got my arm twisted to do an outreach event, and I ended up setting up right next to Amelia. Well, I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and Amelia kind of got me organized, and I, I've did a number of events with Amelia. It's been a while, including out near the dark site at the volunteer fire station right next door to us, and it just it's always been a good feeling in my heart. That's how I got to know Steve and Amelia, and I'm glad that I got started doing outreach so early in my astronomy career. Anyway, with that, I'm going to go ahead and start introducing folks. Uh, Dan Roy will speak first. Dan is our outreach and education and outreach chairperson, and Dan's been a member of HAS since about 2016. And that whole time that Dan's been a member, he brought his astronomy outreach with him from San Antonio and started out in League City with a monthly outreach event, Astronomy in the Park in League City, Texas. And it goes on rain or shine. And it's been going on for ever since Dan joined HAS. And Dan is a retired engineer that has been involved internationally in a career in biomed, aerospace, and software business. And one of the other very cool things he does, which is very outreach oriented, is that he uh, uh, serves, he is, hosts and volunteers for the Foundation for International Space Education, the United Space School. And it's a program where 25 kids from all over the world, really bright kids, come to Houston for an intensive workshop about the space program. And I know that's one of the things Dan's very proud of doing, and hopefully he'll give us a little look into how that goes. Next up, I've already kind of told a little bit of a story on Amelia, but Amelia joined HAS in 1980. So when I joined in 2004, um, uh, I was so amazed at how much she knew and how little I did. And I can honestly say I learned a lot from Amelia. Amelia is a big proponent of doing the Astronomical League observing programs. She's a master observer and has a master outreach award as well. Her real passion these days, though, is observing open star clusters. And at any rate, next, Joyce Almager Reisdorf and Matt Reisdorf. Joyce and Matt really, I think they just joined in the last 2 years, joined HAS and jumped right in and started doing astronomy in the park, in Memorial Park, and it's a very successful outreach event, and it's a great place for a lot of our newer members to come out. Even if you don't bring a telescope, come out, see what's going on, and get your feet wet. Eventually, you can bring your own telescope, and it's a good way to learn. Next are up are Matt and Burlage and Erica Conan. They're also very new members to HAS. Again, 2 to 3 years of membership, and in the time that they've been members of the of HAS, they've done a lot for our organization. Matt heads up our astrophotography SIG, as well as he and Erica took over the outreach event at Kleb Woods Park on the northwest side of, I think it's in Tomball, actually, up in northwest side of Houston. Both Matt and Erica are also engineers, PhD engineers in the oil and gas industry, and it was the astrophotography part that brought them in. And I think if you ask them now, they would tell you that outreach is big an interest for them as astrophotography. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan, who is going to tell us a little bit about his outreach and what it means to him and to the people that he presents to in the public.
You're muted, Dan.
If I unmute, okay. Let me start with telling you where I'm from.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dan. I forgot to mention one thing, okay?
Sure.
Sorry, that's my fault. If you have questions for any of the folks presenting, please put them in the chat, and we're going to take questions after all the presentations are done. Thank you.
Okay, good enough. Now, I've been here in this country for 48 years. So by now, my accent is totally gone, but I want you to know that I am not from Pittsburgh, PA, like I like to say. Really, I was raised and educated in Paris, France. And I want to share with you some of the folks that I admire that made my brain. And we'll start with Jean Picard, not to be confused with Jean-Luc of Enterprise fame. This guy was one of the first French astronomers. He was basically measuring stuff. Now, you know this guy, but you may not know that he did a lot of work in optics. And let me tell you that in France, we don't call it Snell's law. It is les lois de Descartes, okay? Now, Giovanni Domenico Cassini was born in the Comté de Nice, and he immigrated to France in 1669, became director of the Paris Observatory, and of course, he is well known for his work on Saturn, which his son, Jacques de Cassini II, completed by looking at the orbits of the major satellites of Saturn. An entire dynasty was Cassini, really Franco-American, I mean, Americano, maybe Franco-Italian. And the grandson and great-grandson continued the tradition by being involved with cartography. Now, you know this guy. You know, this guy started astronomy because of comets, and he discovered 13 of them. But my favorite is the Marquis de Laplace. And I remember having to study his book, Celestial Mechanics, which was absolutely fascinating. And I never thought an equivalent of this wonderful book until I fell into this. Now, this, I will give you the list, the URL. If you send me email at danroy@stpp.com, it's a wonderful book, and it's free. Okay, the price is right. And my wife will tell you I'm very cheap. Everything I do is free. And this book is free, but if you like it, be careful. You will do a lot of second order differential equations, calculus, and linear algebra. But very well worth it. It's a fantastic book that is close to the spirit of celestial Mechanics Celeste. Okay, Jean-Louis Pons, I wanted to throw this one in because you may never have heard of him. He is the first French amateur astronomer. He had very little education. He was sweeping the the ground of the Marseille Observatory when he tried to help the astronomers, and they were quick to notice that he had an astrophotographic memory. And it is this memory that allowed him to discover 37 comets. 37 people! That's 3 times Monsieur Messier. An absolutely amazing record. Now, of course, Le Verrier with Neptune, Henri-Jacques Chrétien of Richney Chrétien fame. And I want to spend a little bit more time on Mrs. Jas here, a wonderful role model when it comes to the outreach. He had a brilliant studies of spectroscopy of dwarf planets, but she was definitely born for outreach. And she administered major international publication, organized all sorts of congress on various astronomical subjects. She led the people in the floor of the Observatoire de Marseille, which at the time was unheard of. She did a lot for women, even wrote a children's book for astronomy. So she is a sister in arms, one of the women I deeply admire, and sometimes I find myself asking, what would she do? Really, I'm serious. So anyway, Gérard de Vaucouleurs for the shapes of galaxy, and one of his students, Mrs. Françoise Combe here, who is still alive, and study galaxy dynamics with simulation and observations as well. And she is an expert in dark matter and bond. And in these days, when the European Space Agency, I launched the Euclid spacecraft, when we were about to have first light with the Vera Rubin Observatory on the 15th of July, and with SphereX, which is about to be launched, I think you will hear about this extraordinary scientist. Okay, back to my favorite subject. I think I'm out of place talking to those people, but they are part of my culture. They are the guys who shape the way I think, and they are the reason why I really do outreach. I fell in love with astronomy in Paris, for heaven's sake. And that's not the best place to do that. I mean, they have this big tower in the middle, right? And this huge beacon that swaps you every few seconds. And you cannot even see the Starlink satellites. It's not a good place for astronomy. And Debbie, you should get in there and put them into shape. But Leak City is no better. And you know what? The very first astronomy in the park that don't talk about. I had John Ranaf here. I had Jim King. I had Stephen Amelia Goldberg. I mean, I was ready for bear, ready to show the stars to people. But nobody came. No one. Zip. Nada. No one. Now that pissed me off. Okay, pardon my French, but that pissed me off. And so I determined that I was going to grab my friends at the city council by the necktie, and I would not let go. And grabbed I did. And this is now improved because now I have these particular flyers that are distributed to 150,000 people. Okay, the first thing I want to share with you, do not wait for darkness, okay? This is a world that is full of light. Use it. And what I do first in any of the star party I organize, I start with the solar system. So I download the slides from the planets today, and then I draw lines from the sun to the planet to show where they are on the ecliptic. I also have put together a solar system model with little tents, pieces of wood that are linked by some kind of a hinge, and I have a string attached to it. The string length is proportional to the semi-major axis of the orbit of a planet around the sun. And then I drill in the back a hole that is the size of a planet to scale. And for instance, Uranus here at that particular scale is about half a centimeters in diameter. So let me tell you that Earth at this particular scale is nearly invisible. It took me a while to find the particular drill that would be able to go in the wood and give justice to this particular planet. Then I enlist the participation of the audience to put my little tents representing the planets on the ecliptic according to the map. And then we go one by one to the planets. And this is one of the things I love. You see, the kids are so excited, they are so happy, they are going around, and that's what it should be. It should be fun, okay? We should not bore them with billions of kilometers. We should tell them stuff that we will relate to, that will excite them, that will inspire them. That is part of the joy of outreach. Another way that you can show the solar system without that big of a deal is to put together a poster like this. I put the planets to scale, and then I look at somebody in the audience who is 6 feet tall, because at that scale, 6 feet is the size of the sun. So I ask this person to carry this particular poster. He is the sun, and then I tell people things that they can relate to. You know, the kind of locations they will understand. For instance, when I am at the park, at the Rustic Oak Park, and you see the planet Mercury here. If it was at that scale, our solar system, if the sun is where I'm sitting now, this thing would be at Orange Blossom Street, which leads to the park. Now, the planet Mars over there would be at the intersection of Main Street and the Bay Area Boulevard. You know, that kind of stuff that gives them an idea of the size of the planets. It is not a big deal to do that, and it can be done in the daytime. It can be done any time, and you don't have a telescope. You don't have to have a telescope to do that. One other thing I want to share with you, it is very important to leave them with something. They've been queuing for 10 minutes at your telescope, and they spend 10 seconds at the eyepiece. I mean, give them something they can remember even by. So I duplicate the astronomical leak charts. I give them flyers about the various things that are important that day or that night. And also I leave them with a list of URLs. On the one side, I have all the URLs that deal with the astronomers, the astronomy observatories and other things of interest, such as NASA Clips. And on the other, I have this list of free software because, again, whatever I do is free. And of course, I do always demonstrate Stellarium. And that is very important because kids will need to recognize what's going on in the sky. That's the very first thing you do in astronomy. What's going on in the constellation? And Stellarium is beautiful for that. And not only that, you can tell the kids cute story about the Andromeda princess and Perseus the hero and all that. Now, I have branched to microscopy for a lot of reasons. One, I am convinced that this is the molecular biology century. And I know that this will create the best jobs, the fortunes will be made. I want the kids to know about this. And the kids are definitely interested seeing the little ecosystem in a drop of water. I display clips from various origins that show the micro world. And when it rains, microscopes don't care. That's why I never cancel. Of course, there is the standard green laser pointer thing, but we were invited by Space Center Houston to show the eclipses to the people of the area. And we had a booth at Space Center Houston back in October with my 8-inch here on a go-to mount and my wife 100 millimeter and my contraption that may not be very professional, but is a fantastic little instrument when you want to show the sun. Because this is just an old spotting scope I used when I was shooting at the range. And this particular thing produces fantastic image by the projection method. I could see the spots, not only the spot, but the shapes of the spots by projection. And one of the advantage is that I may have many people around it, and they can all watch it at the same time, not having to queue for one single eyepiece. Highly recommended. Then my friend Hadi and Dao and I, as partners in the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, NASA Partner Eclipse Ambassador program, we put together a talk for them, and we gave this talk at Space Center Houston in the main amphitheater. Here I show the distance between the moon and the Earth. Hadi is explaining the eclipse. And one thing that you can do anytime, take a cantaloupe an arm length and have a lamp on your forefront, and then slowly turn to your right. And the people in the public will see all the phases of the moon. It's very spectacular. It's very easy. It doesn't need a telescope, and people really can relate to it. Of course, I got in trouble with the ISP by having those filters here at various places, and we don't like that because the lawyers told them, yeah, it's got to be ISO. Okay, ancillary fertilizer. We all do that, okay? And there is no shame in looking at the sun with those instruments that way. Another thing you can do during the daytime, and which does not require telescope, show them about what a length mean, the optical lens mean. Sorry, anyway, you go to the dollar store and you get one of those 1 diopter reading glasses. You cut it in half, and then a little bit of work, and you get yourself a wonderful sun observatory, because 1 diopter means the focal length. That's it. The focal length is 1 meter. So that's the one way to show, which I show in my expensive optical bench here. This is the way to show the sun. That is very easy to do in the daytime again. No need to wait for darkness. Now, the guy who I really admire about having the kids to work on interesting stuff is Bobby Martin at John Paul Landing Park. He has the kids put together a projector for the constellations. And he has that to an art, because you see, here the kids, by putting a flashlight inside one of those tubes, can project the shape of the Pleiades. What I do when it rains, I have the telescope inside the shelter, and I put a big 3x5 poster of Mars in the back of my car, and the kids can look at it in remaining dry. That can be used in schools. Here is, for instance, the telescope, and here is the poster some 50 feet away. It can be done anywhere with any kind of poster. Now, as Non indicated, my most favorite particular start party is United Space School. This is when we get 50 brilliant kids from 25 countries. We keep them for 2 weeks in local families. And in those 2 weeks, those kids, 15 to 19, put together a mission to Mars. They are fantastic kids, and their English is better than mine, and not difficult. So I would like you to know that, because I need families for my kids. If you have an extra bedroom, please keep in touch with me, because for 2 weeks, you just have to bring them to UHCL or JSC at 8 a.m., pick them back at 5 p.m., and it brings together people from different countries, different cultures, and it's magnificent. I have so many invitations to go all over the world that I will not be able to take advantage of them. You can do shows in libraries, like I did recently with Radi, with Boy Scouts, but be careful. If there is a drawback to outreach, here it is. You will need a bigger fridge. And there is so much cute stuff. This woman particular got this little sub-inch kind of telescope with a doll. And my favorite is this. Some of those 3 girls that were using my binocular care, that absolutely wonderful. This gives you wonderful memories. Here is my team. Michael Segura, here in the back, former Navy. My dear friend, who is now an IHS member, and I'm sorry I did not see his name on the new members. It should be there. My wife, Rebecca, and of course, my dear friend from Senegal, Fadi Ndao, a colleague, former student in astrophysics at Embry-Riddle University, but still studying to be an astrophysicist. Sometimes I have wonderful friends helping me there. And here I want you to have a good look at the face of this young woman at USS 2018, listening to our own Amelia. And you know, Amelia, years back, gave a fantastic speech that I think should be available on our website. I will not remember all of it in its beauty, but she said, after an outreach at some community college, that she was impressed by how serious people were listening to her. And she said, this is why we do this. This makes it worthwhile. Join us. So I will follow my dear friend and mentor, Amelia Goldberg, to tell you, join us. Share the joy of learning. Learn to plant a seed at watching world. And since these are times that try man's soul, join us. so that the enlightenment of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. That's all I had.
Okay, Amelia, if you can share your screen and come off mute.
Okay, you're on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you very good.
Okay, thank you. I've kept a photo journal. It's not working. Hold on a minute. I've kept a photo journal of all the outreach events that I've taken my pink telescope Astrea to. And so I'd like to share with you tonight some of those special memories from my journal. We were invited to be the entertainment for a nighttime wedding. The bride and groom had gotten engaged at the George Observatory and they wanted astronomy to be part of their wedding. Now that's pretty cool. About a year or so later, we were at the George for Astronomy Day. And this guy comes up and asks if I remembered being at a wedding with my telescope. He said he was the groom. A few minutes later, his wife comes by and she introduces herself. She said that she was hoping I would be there that night. So we talked for a few minutes and then she gave me a big hug before she went on her way. We were at Discovery Green for the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. The park was packed. People everywhere, hundreds of them. HAS had 10 telescopes out there with 15 volunteers. You can see Craig Lamison right here with his setup. We heard so many wows and that's amazing and is that really real that night? People were excited by what we were showing. We counted that 650 people looked through my telescope that night. And that's not counting how many people looked through the other 9 telescopes that were out there. On cloudy nights, we'll set up indoors, either down a long hallway or in the gym. I've made some planet models that we'll hang up so that the kids at least have something to look at in the telescopes. And the little kids, like this one, just love looking in the telescope and seeing themselves in the primary mirror. So even cloudy nights are not a total loss. We go to Memorial Park regularly. The last time that I was out there, it had been cloudy all day long and no hope of it clearing up for the night. So we decided to do what we call a petting zoo. And that's where when you show the kids how to handle a telescope and then you let them find something. Luckily, that night, Venus and Saturn kept popping out of the clouds. So the kids got a really big kick out of finding one of them in the telescope all by themselves. And some of the adults did too, as you can see this lady here. We do outreach during the day. We do solar observing. We set up our telescope at the local community center for a family fun day. Here you can see my solar filter securely taped to the front of my telescope. We've also done solar observing out at the George Observatory. And
It's there.
right here is the sun. We were at the Second Baptist Church for an astronomy party for their foreign exchange students and their families. During the evening, this little girl looked through my telescope at Saturn. And her mom asked her if she could see Saturn. And she says, no, just the eye. The kids are just amazing. Think about that for a minute. She'd never seen Saturn before. Most of her kids her age can relate to the moon because they see it all the time, but she'd never seen Saturn. So the only thing that she could relate what she was looking at was a human eye. I knew she had seen it, but she just didn't know what it was. We were asked to bring telescopes to the Raven Tower bar. We set 3 telescopes up on the rooftop of the building, 5 stories up. We had a very beautiful view of the nighttime Houston skyline. Excuse me. Excuse me, guys. It was exciting for us and for the guests to see downtown all lit up from such a high perspective while we were looking at the moon, Jupiter, and Saturn in the telescopes.
Okay.
They only let a few people up on the rooftop at a time, but we managed to get over 100 people up there that night to look through the telescopes. We shut down at midnight, and there were still people in the bar who wanted to go up, but sadly they had to be turned away. And then there's the outreach events that you'll never forget, the ones that touch your heart and really brings home what outreach is all about. Like the one we did a few years ago at Liberty High School. This is a night school for English learners. Classes are held at night because these students hold down full-time jobs during the day to help support their families. They were very grateful that we took the time to go to them and to share our love of astronomy and our knowledge of astronomy with them. They really appreciated it, and we were thanked over and over again. When the kids had to go back to class, one of the teachers stayed behind and talked with us for a while. She got quite emotional talking about the hardships these kids go through every day. Their stories really touched us all. And I don't think any one of us will ever forget that night, or those kids, or the teacher who cared so much. Another unforgettable one was this Cub Scout group. Look at this little boy's face. He had just looked at Jupiter in my telescope. He was so excited, he could hardly get the words out. When you see this kind of a reaction from a child, it just says it all. You're so glad to be a part of it. And that's why we keep doing outreach. So if you've never done outreach before, go for the next event. You don't have to take a telescope if you don't feel comfortable doing it. Just check out what we do. Get your feet wet, so to speak. I think you'll be glad you did. Steve and I have been doing outreach for 40 plus years. I can't even imagine not doing it. It's become a normal part of our lives. Thank you.
Thanks, Amelia. Really appreciate your take on that. Matt and Joyce, do you want to take it from here?
We've got it. Awesome. All right. So from very experienced to very new, I'm Joyce. This is Matt. We coordinate the outreach events at Memorial Park. We've been members since February of 2024, and we've been coordinating Memorial Park since August of 2024. So quite new. We joined because we wanted to be able to learn how to do local outreach, and you can let us know how we're doing. Here we go.
Sure. No, and Memorial Park is really a great place for both the public and for us to get involved with outreach. It's a great space. It's a space the public can find. Everybody, there's lots of people walking around. You can just drop in. That we can find, we can get to very easily. It has a parking lot right next door, has a food truck, very accessible, has a nice pavilion, has a nice grassy area with some almost kind of sort of dark skies that we can get to. And it is really a good place for people to get involved. It also helps that the Memorial Park Conservancy works with us. They advertise the events. They help with the scheduling. They help with the space reservations. They help tell all the neighbors in the local community about it and help draw a crowd to it. So they handle a lot of the social media and things like that as well. And of course, we get a space that has power, that has a cover in case of inclement weather, that has a nice patio, and lets us do a lot of good things at it. Mila mentioned the telescope petting zoo that we did there, that we can have talks and engage the public before the event happens. And it doesn't take much to get involved. So my perspective as somebody fairly new to this group, as somebody who knows much less about astronomy than most of you on the call, that's me there sitting next to a 4-inch telescope, about the smallest thing that you can bring out. And look how many people are lined up waiting to take a look at the moon through this. You who've been involved in this great hobby in science for a lot of years may hopefully can still remember how wonderful it was the first time you got a chance to look through a small telescope at the moon or Jupiter or Saturn. And being able to share that again and again and again with everybody in the line just is powerful and exciting. And it draws people in. I've had conversations with people who, after they looked at one of the plans, would step back and try to understand more and ask questions. Wants to understand how the ecliptic works and why does Venus look like a crescent? What are these little dots sitting there next to Jupiter, and how do those work? And sometimes I get to answer the questions. Sometimes many of you who have come to these events, some of you have come not even without a telescope, just to stand and talk to people, answer questions, and how wonderful that is to pull people into science, to pull people into what we know and love. Of course, as people large and small, we have had young people come to these events repeatedly and start to really begin a lifelong passion of both of astronomy, but the sciences in general. And of course, it's not just me. Amelia mentioned that her experiences, both at Memorial Park and elsewhere, but many of you have come to these events with instruments that are amazing and wonderful and beautiful to share. And that's part of the joy. Memorial Park doesn't close. We can stay late. And often near the tail end of these events, it actually becomes a bit of an HAS informal meeting. I've really appreciated the chance to meet many of you in person, to see some of the instruments that you brought out, to hear the story of how some of you have built your own instruments or acquired them through years of passion and work, and what you have done with them. And I have learned so much just standing and watching you work, and you work with the public. Sometimes events hit the news, and that brings a lot of people out. This was people trying to see the comet that came out last year. We stood in a grassy area in the park. We had a ton of people out there. And my gosh, we saw it through binoculars, through little telescopes, through the naked eye. In the middle of Houston, we saw the comet. And for people to hear about an astronomy event in the news, come out and see it, experience it, bring it home with them, wow, to be part of all that. And so you've also brought some digital instruments, which is fantastic, because then you can share not just through a little eyepiece, but through a larger screen, so a large group can all understand what's happening. We've had sea stars come out, we've had more complex digital instruments come out, and all of that is welcome. As Mila mentioned also, it's welcome to come out with no instrument at all, if you want to just be able to talk and answer questions and have a bit of a discussion. Go ahead.
Pretty much got it. So one of the things we have learned is that when we're at Memorial Park, we have a lot of pluses. It's a park that a lot of people know how to access. It offers a lot of things like water, food trucks, food not very far away, The restrooms for the people with small children are really, really important. It's very wheel accessible. The downside of that, if that is a downside, is that once something goes out from the park to the entire city, it's difficult to change. And so if you are going to do an event at that scale, you have to be prepared to be flexible. For instance, we had planned that this Saturday, we're going to be at the park. We planned to be there at 7:30. The park put out that we're going to be at 7. So now we're going to be at the park at 7 o'clock.
So 7 o'clock a week from today.
That's right. Or
Ides
Ides of March. Ides of March. That's right, on Saturday. And we're just going to roll with it, and that's fine. It's really good. The other thing that I think is important to keep in mind is that even if you don't say much of anything, I think giving people a chance to look and observe your instruments is really, really valuable. We maybe forget that we don't all always have access to the same amount of opportunity to just try to figure something out and observe it and look at it. And Matt showed a photo earlier where somebody was looking at the bottom of the dog trying to figure out what was there. And we've had a lot of kids looking down the tube, trying to see what's in that. And so just showing up with your instrument, letting people look at it is such a gift. It's been a really, it's been a gift. We really, Dan, thank you for getting us involved, because this has just been, it's been an amazing year for us. We've really enjoyed it. And we hope that you can come out and feel the same at Memorial Park. So yeah, next to the other Matt, I think, and Erica.
Yes, Matt and Erica.
Awesome. Yep. Let's see, share this screen and share. Yep. Did it come through well? Yeah, awesome. Great. Yeah, so I'll be showing what we do for Clapwood Nature Preserve. So I run this together with my wife, Erica. We joined HAS in June 2023. We were initially trying to just make nice images of nebula. And then we discovered there's a whole universe of more enjoyment right after. So we are astro imagers, I guess, because we use a lot of camera stuff. Astronomical amateurs, absolute bottom, amateurs, everything is new for us. But we are really amazed by the universe mysteries. And one of the reasons why we kind of accidentally picked up outreach, but it really clicked so well for us, is that we did discover that this is extremely energizing to share your joy and excitement of the universe with people that are really new to the space. So it literally opens up the world. And through even like small moments of seeing Saturn for the first time through a telescope, I always thought it was kind of cheesy to look at Saturn and Jupiter, but it makes a massive impression on people and kids in particular. And we have a couple of frequent visitors now, kids that really discovered the universe through their first experience by seeing Saturn, and they're now coming to all our events regularly, and you really see them grow in both what they learn about the universe, the questions that they have, so it has been a very, very, very wonderful experience. So the way we got into this is that at a certain point, Don Adams was hosting the JPL Landing outreach, and he got a call from a naturalist that was running Clapwood, like, hey, can you guys organize also an event here? And then we kind of adopted this space. It's right around the corner for us, so very, very close by. It's a wonderful location. So geography-wise, so it's like, North Cyprus, Tombol area. It's like on Mushki, just right after 99. So it is... it's not completely swallowed by Houston yet. And this park is a wonderful nature park. It is very secluded. It's in the forest. It's dark. It is very cozy in a way. And it is still a little bit dark. So during our events, you can see Andromeda, you can see M42, Orion Nebula, you can see the Pleiades, once they're up. But it's still good to give a really rich, experience for observing. So that works out really well. And then the park itself it has a meeting room indoors. So it is a really nice wooden building where they have often programs from the Hummingbird Festival to other different events going on. But there's like a nice meeting room there, about 80 or so seats. Sometimes we literally have to drag the chairs from the park officers in the room because we run out of seats, and sometimes people even sit on the ground. So, but it is very, it's very cozy environment. It does require upfront registration, so it's not a walk-on event. So it is a limited, concentrated experience. Our park naturalist is a rock star in getting the message out, the marketing, but also just making sure that everything runs well. This is quite unique because this park is usually closed at night. There's a lot of nightlife there, but she managed to lobby for limited astronomy nights across the year, for which there's a special budget assigned so they can have additional staffers on site if that's required for that evening. And then it was a real big surprise that both the park naturalist and her husband just joined as a HAS member a couple of months ago. So yeah, absolutely working really well for us. This is in country precinct 4, so it's basically the precinct from Leslie Briones. So our formula, right? So we decided to go for something very, very different than a broad, really open outreach. And it works well for us. And I'm grateful for the model that we have in the Houston Astronomical Society, that as an organizer of these outreach events, it's up to you, right? It's you have to figure out what works well for you, how you can sustainably run these events. And we found that concentrating these to 4 events per year is working really well. And we do that because this particular park, in the summer, you have shorter daylight or nighttime hours. You have mosquitoes also coming in. It can be too hot sometimes. So we really try to do 4 events and then concentrate them to the beginning of the year too, and then in the winter season too again. So we kind of skip summer and then even distribute them out a little bit. We also choose for this formula because we have a little bit of an ambitious agenda when it comes down to the program itself. So we always want to have a talk. So here you see a picture of the Q&A during one of those talks, where Eric and I, we really prepare like a 30-minute talk about a specific topic or theme, and a little bit more on that later. And then after that, we follow up with the star party. And I gotta say, Steve Goldberg, this is your picture. It's the only picture that we have because usually we have a very good dark night policy. So nobody uses their phone when we have a star party. It's because it's so dark over there. So this is one of the rare proof of evidence that we actually have a star party out there. So a little bit more on that talk, right? So our job in that talk is to really spark that astro curiosity and energize the people that show up there. I kind of jumped over it, but when you go to this park, you park at the exit or at the outside of the park, and then you walk in through a very dark trail up to that meeting house. And we have this whole trail lined up with small red LED lights, like breadcrumbs. So it's we have kind of an experience, and then you go into the talk, and then you go to the star party. So we really want to show in this talk very like recent topics, like new things, something that is fresh, and then also inspire people and the kids in particular to just ask everything that they want to know about everything in the universe. So it goes from are there dolphins on Mars all the way to like when are we going to collide with M31, or how do you measure the distance of galaxies, right? So we get very, very different questions. And my wife and I, we try to find an answer, and if we don't, then we also say we don't know. But sometimes we promise to take one of those questions over into the next presentation. So if they come up and show in again, then we have prepared a little bit of an answer. And also that talk is important because there we can give some instructions on the star party to make the star party the darkest experience and give them the best joy of observing. Some of the topics that we have, so we started with astrophotography, then it was eclipse season, so or season, our big event here in Texas. So we had like 1 month before the eclipse, we could give people some prepping experience. And there also we had the pleasure to invite Dan and his colleague from Senegal, that were the eclipse ambassadors from NASA. So we had the NASA ambassadors at the talk. It was fantastic. Then we talked about celestial stories and exoplanets. We got very inspired by one of the general meeting talks that we had about measuring atmospheres on exoplanets. And one of these talks that we had in our club was showing this video where they discovered all these exoplanets with the transits. So as we were preparing for this particular outreach event, we decided to kind of steal a little bit from that material and put more exoplanets and habitable life kind of questions and discussions in that presentation. Then we had a special on spectroscopy, like the colors of light, and understand how you break light, diffract light. We got clouded out. We got a fantastic Cloudy Nights program to work with that. And then the last time we really talked about how telescopes work, so that when the kids get out there later in the star party, they could actually look at the equipment and recognize how these machines work, and if there are mirrors or glasses, and how the light bounces away. So a little bit on that. And of course, then we go into the space telescopes and why you have them and so forth. So that was a great topic as well. So that is on the talk side. On the star party itself, this is where we have the stars, and the other stars are the HES volunteers. So we are very, very grateful for a good solid group of volunteers that are willing to show up, bringing massive Dobsonians, fitting them into their cars, and then drag them over there. And that is so important because a 10-inch Dob is just magic. In particular in this space, because you can really do so much there, and we don't have any visual equipment ourselves, so we heavily rely on those volunteers. And our volunteers, they also bring a lot of stories with them, so they can actually explain what people are seeing. So this part is really the result of the volunteers. I also prepare some targets up front. So I just go to Stellarium to see what's up in the night sky. And sometimes I ask our volunteers like, hey, could you maybe focus on this one? Because I walk around to see which areas we cover. So we want to prevent like 4 telescopes on Jupiter, that kind of stuff. But it's also open, of course, if people bring their own ideas, like Alberio last time. I never even thought about that, but that's a great visual target for us as well. We have limited parking available in the park itself, which is usually completely closed. So that is also very unique, thanks to the naturalist. It's first come, first serve. So we have about 5 spots or so left. So that is really nice as well. And we're able to set up before and while the talk starts, and we have some extra time to hang out afterwards. So this is really nice. It's also for us a little bit of a social event. And then it's not like you can park your rig there for astrophotography for the whole night, but we are not in a hurry to leave the park, and it is always really nice to chat afterwards a little bit. So again, we're super grateful to have a very supportive team of HAS volunteers here with the scopes. So what we learned, right? So one of the things you see our rainy day program, spectroscopy. That was kind of an interesting thing that we kind of had to invent on the spot. We have a whole write up on this somewhere on the website if you're interested. But it was one of the coolest things to explain spectroscopy to people that are very new to that. So so a couple of points there. So if you're organizing this, I think it's super important that you keep pace and you always show up. People are making reservations, so they expect to go there. They cancel maybe some Saturday night dinner or something. So they want to be there, and you don't want to show up as the event that is canceled. But also for the park staff, it's really important because they have really thought tooth and nail to get this budget and keep the park open and have the people assigned there. So yeah, we got to also support them in making the event successful. So counting the people that are there, but also really making sure that it's just there and they can also count on you. So if you get cloudy out though, we have an iron rule. We always let the HAS volunteers know that the event is clouded out and we will not have a star party. And I think that's super important because they are dragging a lot of equipment to the site. So we want to be super transparent. We're not going to bet on like maybe some clouds, maybe or not. No, if we're canceling the star party, then they'll be absolutely the first to know. Yeah, the other big discovery was this social event is one of the important social events that you can have also in the club, right? We have the dark side. If you've not been there yet, if you're a new member, that's a fantastic place, right? That is where people really come together now. And these outreach events, I think they're absolutely second best in-person meetings that we have today in our club. So we're making plans for more in-person meetings and so forth. That's still going on, but this is what we have now. And on top of that, of course, you have your AP6 that was talked about, and then general meetings where you can dial in and connect. But if you want to meet more HAS members, a great way to do that is to join an outreach event. You can just bring your binocular or don't bring anything, just show up and chat. Yeah, the other thing is for the topics themselves, we always try to connect to the recent events, like the ingredients for life from the asteroid lately that you see there at the bottom. And it really connects very well. And actually, sometimes the kids even already know about the events, and they ask if we know anything about it. So that's a big deal, and we always steal and leverage from the general and office meetings because there is such high quality and very inspirational. And yeah, last three things is absolutely love your HAS volunteers. That is so important. The actual visual experience, but also the sea star that we had out there last time, thanks to Ed. Those kind of things, they are just fantastic. We just connecting that way, showing like, hey, what is there is now suddenly in your eye or in your hand. That's a massive experience. So yeah, that's kind of what I had for it right now, Don.
All right, very good. Thank you all. I appreciate it. We didn't get much in questions in the chat, so I thought I'm going to just lead off with a couple of thoughts, and then any of you who are on the call, if you want to add something or ask a question, come off mute. But what I wanted to add, since outreach was a very important way for me to get involved early in my HAS career. And I got to tell two stories about it that were most important to me. I know Steve and Amelia were there, and Jim King and myself, and we went to it was an elementary school on the east side of Houston. It was in the middle, it was February, they were having their science night. And it looked like it was going to possibly be a cloudless night, but normally like February, as we were getting set up, the clouds came rolling in. They had programs set up inside, and we were out by ourselves, except for one young guy. He was probably a sixth grader who came and was just asking me a bazillion questions as I was setting up my telescope, and wanted me to show him all about it. And aren't you supposed to be inside? Yeah, but I'd rather be out here. Long story short, he helped me set it up, and then he took it over. I suggested to him, well, we don't have, it's cloudy. What can we look at? Well, how about you look at that street light down there, see if you can find it. Sure enough, he found it. And then all of a sudden he's focusing it in, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, I can see the moths around the street light. Oh my goodness. He was just freaking out. About that time, the indoor program ended, and all these kids started coming out, and he's running around, grabbing all of his friends and dragging them to my telescope to show them the moths floating around the streetlight. The second one, the story that sticks with me the most. I was volunteering at the George Observatory on the 18, and I still hadn't really gotten far enough along to actually run the 18. I was doing the crowd control as people were in line to see through the telescope. And I happened to notice there was a woman. She had to be in her early 80s, maybe 80, maybe 85, and she was very determined that she was gonna get to see the telescope. So just to be accommodating, I went and started chatting with her and telling her, okay, this is what you got to do. You got to step up a couple steps. You're going to be able to do that. I'll be with you. Da da da. And explain to her about the open star cluster we were going to be looking at. And just as she was about to step up there, I said, now, she was so excited. I've never looked through a telescope before in my life. I said, well, you've earned it. Don't hurry. Take your time. Who's going to push you off, right? Nobody's going to mess with you. She said, that's a great idea. She got up to the eyepiece and she's probably spent 5 minutes there. And the whole 5 minutes, I was coaching her, move your eye around and whatever. She's just bubbling over and asking me questions about what she was seeing. She was the most joyful person at the first time at the eyepiece I had my whole outreach career. Anyway, those are my two cents. And if any of you out there would like to add anything else or ask some questions, please come off of mute and feel free to chime in. Michael Rapp, you have he just put something in the chat. For me, doing outreach in high school led directly to my career as an educator. You never know where these things will lead. Michael, are you still there, or do you want to talk about that?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I can mention that. So, I started volunteering out at the George and in high school in the early 1990s, and I discovered very quickly that I'm a very shy, reticent individual, but volunteering out there allowed me to realize that I enjoyed explaining things to people. And I was like, hey, this might be kind of fun. Could I get paid for this? And so that directly, through college and everything, allowed me to, have a career as an educator. And also, there's another wonderful thing about doing outreach. I happened to fall in love with a very wonderful woman out of the George Observatory, and we've been married for 25 years now. So there you go.
I guess you could say it was in the stars.
And there you go.
Now, I want to add something. I saw Bill Pitt here, and he's doing wonderful regular talks at John Paul Landing Park. Bill, are you still here? If you are, I will want to hear from you. He left us.
Anybody else that wants to share an experience or ask a question? I recognize a couple of names of folks that may have been at outreach.
Well, I want to give a little pat in the back to Matt and Erica. I was able to participate to one of their talks, and you know what? I'm very impressed by the scientific level of the kind of talks they are doing, and they are doing it in a magnificent way. I mean, when you're talking about spectroscopy, for heaven's sake, you don't want to drown people. And those PhDs, and by the way, brothers and sisters from Europe, I'm happy to acknowledge, because you go from the Netherlands, I understand, a wonderful, wonderful country. We always say that France should look like the Netherlands, because it's so clean, But anyway, those guys are putting together such a wonderful, high-level scientific project. I wanted to salute them, and this is great stuff.
Yeah.
And I have nothing to do with it. That's
Well, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Dan. Sorry about Snellius, by the way, but that. Okay. No, we have a lot of joy in connecting those things to the kids. So that's a big deal. I would say what we also discovered is that animals are really clicking well with kids. So when we were going through spectroscopy, we were explaining what birds can see, what colors birds can see versus humans. So we try to always figure out some way to connect that. And it's always a lot of fun. Just the preparations alone is a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay. Bill Spizzeri, you've done a lot of outreach in the past.
I'm not sure you heard me, but
Okay, I
I
just
think he's
turned off my
gone.
mute. Yeah, have I done a lot? A little over 40 years. I've done the telescopes outside. I've done a lot of indoor presentations. A couple of hundred of them. I don't remember exactly. I love doing it, and as I have said many times in the past, the only payment I want, and whether the payment that I get is great questions from the kids, and as was kind of mentioned a few times tonight, you see the look on their face that tells you the most important thing: they get it. Okay, they get it, and when I see that they get it, then I say, okay, my job here is done. It doesn't get any better than that. That's what else can I say?
I think you said it just fine. Thank you. All right. Any other comments, questions?
Just maybe to close, just as a reminder, Matt and Dan, why don't you just say when your next events are, in case anybody who's on the call wants to come?
Well, sure. As far as I'm concerned, it's always the first Saturday of the month in League City. And I must admit, I'm a little disappointed that I do not have much choice with HAS. Now, I have a new member of HAS, my friend Michael Segura, who has been helping us for a number of years. But I never see any kind of HAS who lives in my area at Astronomy in the Park. So, Mr. Rapp, if you can show up, that would be cool. But it's always the first Saturday of the month, rain or shine. I'm very stubborn. I never, ever cancel.
Yeah, I absolutely need to get out there with you. Dan and I are practically neighbors. I live in League City too. But the one thing that's really cool about the astronomy in the park is the support from the city, which is really wonderful. I mean, that is kind of a very unique and wonderful thing that we have going on there.
Okay. There is one question in the chat from Linda Akin-Kunmi, and she asked, "When's the next meeting?" These meetings are always on the first or as close as possible if there's a holiday, the first Friday of the month, and there's an event calendar on our website. Matt just put the link to it there, and you should be able to find that just very well there, Linda. Thanks for the question. All right, I think we've probably gotten to the point where we need to wrap it up. It's been a very good presentation, and I think we all have felt a little bit of the love we all have for this outreach thing. And thank you all for presenting, and thank you all for listening with us.